Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, the Senate should note that Borno Central Senatorial District, and indeed Borno State and the Northeast as a whole, has been the epicenter of the Boko Haram insurgency over the years. Saddened that suspected Boko Haram terrorists invaded Auna village few kilometers to Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, around 10 p.m. of Sunday, 9th April 2020, and killed 30 people, burned down shops, and razed about 18 commercial vehicles, including trucks loaded with goods, and abducted many people, mostly women and children. Notes further that the victims arrived at the military checkpoint leading into Maiduguri after the 5 p.m. closure of the gate and had no choice but to sleep in Auna, the neighboring village on the Maiduguri-Damaturu highway. Disturbed that the military usually lock up the gates in the village, both the entrance and exit gates, by 5 p.m. and proceed to spend the night in Maiduguri, despite its closeness to Maiduguri. Further disturbed that there was no single military personnel to engage them, and there was also no reinforcement from Maiduguri despite the proximity of Auna to the headquarters of Operation Lafia Dole. Note that while people of Auna were still in shock over the attack, the insurgents around 6 p.m. Monday 10th February 2020 struck the village of Tungushe in Konduga local government, shooting sporadically, and casualty figures are yet to be ascertained. And just last evening, there was pandemonium in the Polo area of Maiduguri because of an attempted incursion by the Boko Haram insurgents into Maiduguri. A combined team of the crack unit of the Nigerian Police Force, the Civil Defense Force, and the civilian JTF were able to repulse the attack. And Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, at the risk of sounding self-serving, my boss, the Borno State Governor, Professor Zulum, was at the hospital up to the wee hours of this morning, attending to the sick and the wounded. Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, as the Chinese may say, the worst case they may wish for you is for you to live in instructive times. And indeed, just like the Chinese are fighting coronavirus, forming elite consensus, this is also time for us as a people, as a community, to coalesce into a single force and fight the scourges of insurgency, kidnapping, armed banditry, and all other social vices. I do not want to grandstand, and I wish to call on our colleagues who may likely make contributions on this issue not to grandstand. I can easily play to the gallery, gain momentary applause, pour venom on Buhari, lampoon the federal government, but will it achieve the desired result? Unless we suffer from memory amnesia. It was under this same Buhari that between 2015 and 2017, we had a momentary respite before the current relapse. Times like this, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues, calls for sobriety, calls for maturity, calls for contriteness, for circumspection and unity. As the economy minister of Greece rightly said, we have to be the adults in the room. But I wish to call on the Senate to accordingly resolve to condemn in strong terms the dastardly acts perpetuated by these insurgents at Auna and in all the places in the north, east, and the nation as a whole. Observe a minute silence in honor of the deceased victims of the attacks. 3. Urge the federal government to begin a process of rehabilitating the affected communities through the windows of the Northeast Development Commission and the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs and Special Duties. Urge the military authorities to establish a base in Auna, to intensify their efforts in the fight against insurgency in the Northeast, and finally call on the defense headquarters to set up a committee to immediately investigate what transpired in Auna and take measures to forestall future occurrences. I so submit, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues. Thank you.
Senator Ibrahim Hassan.
Ibrahim Hassan Adeja, Jigawa Northeast. Mr. President, I don't want to go into a long submission before concurring and supporting this motion brought about by distinguished Senator Kashim Shettima, but just to say that luckily we have in the chamber the majority leader who is currently chairing the Senate's ad hoc committee on restructuring of our security apparatus. And just to let this chamber know that we've been sitting now for the last 2 days, and I think what we simply need to look at, Your Excellency, is we need to redirect our security agencies to focus on preventive security. We are fighting terrorism and insurgency. It's not a conventional security situation that we can ask the police to take care of. Even our army is trained for war, conventional warfare. Mr. President, these people seem to have taken the advantage of the element of surprise. These people seem to have better information than our security agencies. Because when you have a situation like you have in Auna, virtually every attack, virtually every move they make is predicated on some lapse or some gap in our security apparatus that they take advantage of. That means instead of us focusing on intelligence gathering to nip their attempts in the bud, they are the ones using intelligence to now take advantage of these gaps in our security situation and strike and go back at will. Your Excellency, like I said, I don't want to delve too much into this, and I don't want to preempt what this committee will finally bring back to the Senate for implementation, but we need to change our focus on security. We are being reactive. Every day, whether it's kidnapping, whether it's a terrorist attack, we only move and make noise when the act happens. In most countries that have this problem, they take care of 20, 30, 40 attempts without anybody hearing about it, Your Excellency, because everything is focused on prevention. Intelligence gathering, technology-driven security apparatus, they nip it in the bud. Sometimes they stop these terrorist activities at source, sometimes outside the country of origin. Why can't we focus, why can't we do what is needed, to try to stem this thing, before it completely moves beyond the traditional 2, 3, 4 northeastern states, and we are back to square one. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and on behalf of myself, I want to extend our sympathies to Senator Kashim Shettima and the good people of Borno State. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, I really don't want to comment much on this, what has happened. I only want to comment on just an aspect of the prayers, which is for us to do 1 minute silence for the victims of the Auna attack. And I was just sitting down here with Senator Aduda, and I was calculating how many minutes in a day and how many victims we have. and just to point out a very poignant fact, that if we stand here for 1 minute for every victim of those who have died in this carnage all this time, that will probably stand here for 28 or 29 days. We'll be standing just because of people who have died. And our security agencies must take note of that. I so submit.
Myself with the mover of the motion on this very unfortunate episode. The truth, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, is that we have discussed very thoroughly and indeed very robustly the issue of insecurity in this chamber. And for me, what has happened in Auna is definitely a manifestation of what we have agreed here, a failure of the current security arrangement. And I think the point I would like to highlight and to emphasize is a point I have made earlier. What is the premium on life in Nigeria? I believe as a nation, we must ask ourselves this very critical question. As people always put it, we are very religious, but our religiosity has not stopped us from allowing things that our faith says should not happen. It is said, when you save a life, it's as if you have saved the whole of humanity. And when you kill one life, it's as if you've killed the whole of humanity. And so if you look at the number of people that we are losing across the various shades of the insecurity challenges, honestly, we have to begin to ask ourselves. In some other countries, when one life is lost, you will see the entire nation rising up because of the importance they've attached to that life. So, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I will not want to say too much on this because we are already working. And I believe this is only another spotlight to shed light on the key issues that we must address as a nation. And I would like us at all times, within the context of this assignment, to try to define what is the premium on a Nigerian life. Because we just have to know that we don't own life, we don't manufacture it, we don't create it, and we don't have it. So we must know that every single life matters, and we must do everything in our capacity to do the needful so that this gory story that's besieged our media space all the time will begin to be a thing of the past. I sympathize with those who have lost their loved ones. Almost all of us in this chamber, and indeed all Nigerians, are victims of this current unfortunate situation. And I think it calls for very deep thinking and alternative to what is happening. With this, I submit that we should look at this issue more deeply and critically. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Gabriel Susan.
Mr. President, let me sympathize with Madam Shettima for what has happened within his constituency. Madam Shettima has been on the heat of this since he became governor of that state. And I'm aware, as his colleague then, of efforts that he as a person had made in the past to address the security challenge that he had faced then and he's still facing. Well, in his motion, he cautioned that we shouldn't politicize this. I agree with him. But Mr. President, when you want to hold a bull and bring it down, you have to hold the bull by the horn. But because consistently we have refused to hold the bull by the horn and call a spade, we'll continue to have this problem. If there are issues that have affected the entire of the country, because this is not limited to the northeast or to Borno. In the past, like you said, a few years back, people had thought that it was a northeastern problem or Borno problem alone. Now, this problem has permeated the entire nook and crannies of this country. And like other speakers have mentioned here, in these chambers, from the inception of this 9th Assembly, what has preoccupied us most here, if we take statistics, is the issue of security that have cropped up on a daily basis. Mr. President, I think that it is high time that we approach this differently and we call a spade a spade. And I think that it is not just us. We need the buy-in of the other arms of government, because we can talk, we can articulate the issues as they are, as we see them, as we relate with our people. But if there is no strong synergy or cooperation from the other arm of government, Mr. President, it ends up on the floor here as mere lip service or mere talking. And so we, as elected representative of our people, must move beyond talking on the floor here every day. There are massive killings of our people. Some weeks back, it was Senator Sani. The other time, it was Senator I.D. Gang. And this has continued to come. We talk about security, security, security. You know, we cannot continue, because in the past, we've heard that Boko Haram have been disseminated. Boko Haram has been exterminated. These are all things that have come from the military, that they are finished with Boko Haram. I think that beyond mere propaganda, let us address the issue as Senator Hadija have said here. Let us go to the source of it. It is not about intelligence. We don't lack intelligence. We know exactly where these people are. These people come in trucks. People who come in trucks cannot be invisible. They come in trucks and with, you know, well armed.
The Sango should round up, please.
President, I support the motion as moved by Madam Shettima, but we'll continue to observe 1 minute silence for the people, for Nigerian people. But then we should move beyond that. Like you have set up a committee. Let us see what that committee comes out with, and then we can sit down with the other arm of government so that we can seriously address this problem and put it behind us. I so submit, Mr. President.
Condemn in strong terms the dastardly act perpetuated by these insurgents. Those in favor of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2. Observe a minute silence in honor of the deceased victims of the attacks. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3. Urge the federal government to begin a process of rehabilitating the affected communities through the Northeast Development Commission. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 4. Urge the military authorities to establish a base in Auna to intensify their efforts in the fight against insurgency in the Northeast, and instruct the defense headquarters to set up a panel to investigate what transpired at Auna and find measures to forestall future occurrence. Those in favor of prayer 4 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 5. Urge the federal government through NEMA and Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs to send relief materials to the families of those affected by the attack. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, let me additional prayer. Abu Moro.
President, my name is Senator Abba Moro, representing the good people of the Benue South Senatorial District. Mr. President, my additional prayer is to urge the military and all relevant security agencies involved in the fight against Boko Haram to re-engineer and or re-gig their approach towards fighting insurgency in the northeast and other parts of Nigeria. I so submit, Mr. President.
Any seconder? Senator Abba Moro say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, thank you very much for the various contributions. And let me remind us that in times like this, it is extremely necessary and essential and imperative indeed that leaders come together, regardless of their political platforms and beliefs. As leaders, we are challenged today in this country. And it doesn't matter whether you are APC or PDP or YPP or indeed anything, or even if you don't believe in any political party. So long as you are in position of leadership at any given level, you are challenged. So we have to continue to remain focused and united to ensure that we deal with this serious challenge of security in our country. Today, we all recall that we have our committee, a 17-man committee, ad hoc committee, to work on the security architecture, headed by the Senate leader. That committee is working around the clock. In fact, the Senate leader, I think, will leave by 12 noon. They are engaging with all the relevant security agencies, and including retired military and security people, so that we are able to get the necessary information and input for us to come up with very strong resolutions. There is no way we can do this alone. We have to work with the executive arm of government and indeed other stakeholders. But on this, I want to assure all of us here that we are on the same page with the executive arm of government. Everybody is worried. And at this point, I believe that we are all agreed that the security architecture as presently constituted and designed is simply not giving the outcome that we want, or we need. And therefore, going forward, we'll have to find a better structure and architecture for our security to provide the necessary services that we need for the protection of our lives and property. Why shouldn't we have an active and better equipped, for example, mobile police? The concept of mobile policing was designed at the beginning to be an outfit between the regular police and the military. The mobile police has almost vanished. The military is doing something that it's not supposed to do in many parts of the country. And time has come for us to ensure that governance is done like it's business. You employ someone, give that person a target. He accepts on the basis of the fact that he believes he can meet the target. If he doesn't meet the target, and there is no explanation, cogent reasons why he fails, he should go. And I think when we hold people responsible, they are likely to perform better. So I believe that we are all together in this, and by the grace of God, when our ad hoc committee would have finished its work, probably 1 or 2 more weeks, we'll take our resolutions here, and we are going to engage with the executive arm of government. And let me also advise us that no amount of investment should be too much. We are talking about the lives of the people that we represent. So even if it is through supplementary budget, we should have money. The training institutions of the police, and we should ensure there is proper training for these people. And therefore, I am sure we are going to have a very fruitful engagement and with the executive, and the outcome will be something that will help us cope the current insecurity that we face. Thank you very much. Leader of the Senate. May the souls of our departed compatriots rest in perfect peace. Amen. Leader of the Senate.